Somewhere on the roads circling the Nürburgring, a camouflaged prototype just got photographed doing something almost nobody expected. Not testing a new V8, not chasing a lap record, just quietly, methodically validating a refresh that Lexus apparently doesn't feel the need to shout about. And that single detail, the complete absence of noise around this launch, might be the most revealing thing about the 2027 Lexus RX 350. Because while every other luxury brand on the planet is screaming about horsepower figures and screen sizes, Lexus is doing something almost defiant in its silence. They're just making the thing better. Quietly. Confidently. And the buyers who figure out what's actually changing under that camouflage are going to understand exactly why Lexus doesn't need to compete the way everyone else does. This is Auto Explore, and if you want the kind of deep dive that actually tracks spy photos, dealer documents, and engineering filings instead of just repeating press release fluff, you're in exactly the right place. Subscribe now, because this channel breaks down the cars that matter before the rest of the internet catches up, and the RX 350 story is about to get a lot more interesting in the next few minutes. Let's start with the headline fact that most coverage of this car is getting slightly wrong. A lot of outlets are calling the 2027 RX 350 a carryover model, meaning essentially unchanged from the current generation. And on paper, that's a reasonable assumption, because the current 5th generation RX launched in 2023, and Lexus typically runs a model generation for around 6 years before a full redesign. CarsDirect's own preview coverage notes that Automotive News expects a full redesign to land in 2028, which would technically make 2027 the final year of this generation's life cycle. But here's where the story gets genuinely interesting, and where I think a lot of other coverage is underselling what's actually happening. Because while 2027 might technically be a carryover year on paper, Auto Evolution's spy photographers caught something on the roads around the Nürburgring that tells a completely different story. A camouflaged RX prototype, caught testing, in late spring 2026, for a model year that was supposed to be unchanged. So, why would Lexus send engineers and prototypes to the Nürburgring, one of the most demanding test environments in the automotive world, for a vehicle that's supposedly just coasting through its final year before a generational redesign? That's the question that should stop you in your tracks. And the answer, according to Auto Evolution's direct reporting from their spy photographer partners, is that Lexus is preparing what they're calling a mid-cycle refresh. Not a full redesign. Something more surgical, more targeted, and honestly, more interesting. Because it tells you exactly where Lexus thinks the current RX needed attention. Here's the detail that genuinely surprised me when I dug into this. According to Auto Evolution's spy shot analysis, 90% of the test mule wasn't even wearing camouflage. 90%. When a manufacturer only bothers disguising a small fraction of a prototype, that tells you the changes are concentrated in specific zones, rather than spread across the whole vehicle. And the area that was disguised? The front end, specifically the front fascia. Lexus's own internal sourcing, cited directly by Auto Evolution, states that, externally, the most significant changes will affect the front end. That's about as direct a confirmation as you're going to get before an official reveal. The current spindle grille, the design element that has defined Lexus's visual identity for the better part of a decade, the one people either love or genuinely can't stand, is getting reworked. And interestingly, the same source notes that the headlights themselves weren't touched in this particular prototype, which suggests the changes are about grille architecture and front bumper sculpting rather than a wholesale lighting redesign. Though the source also flags that this could be an early stage mule, meaning additional changes could still show up on later prototypes before the final production reveal. Now let's get into the powertrain conversation, because this is where things get a little more nuanced and worth walking through carefully. The current RX 350, the non-hybrid gas variant, runs a turbocharged 2.4-liter four-cylinder producing 275 horsepower according to Kelley Blue Book's detailed breakdown of the current generation, paired with an 8-speed automatic transmission and available in both front-wheel and all-wheel drive configurations. That engine replaced the previous generation's V6 when the 5th Gen RX launched in 2023, and according to Consumer Reports' independent testing, it delivers around 24 miles per gallon combined. Solid, though noticeably less silky under hard acceleration than the outgoing V6 it replaced. The hybrid variant, badged RX 350S, uses a 2.5-liter four-cylinder paired with electric assist through a continuously variable transmission, producing 246, and Consumer Reports measured an impressive 34 miles per gallon overall in their own testing. A meaningful efficiency jump over the standard gas engine. For 2027, FadeCar's analysis describes Lexus continuing this hybrid-forward strategy, refining the existing powertrain lineup through software optimization and efficiency improvements, rather than introducing an entirely new engine architecture, which tracks with the broader mid-cycle refresh approach, rather than a clean-sheet redesign. But wait, there's a detail buried in Lexus's own marketing language that deserves more attention than it's getting. According to New Lexus USA's official model coverage, the redesigned RX 350 adopts the latest iteration of Lexus's Global Architecture K platform. The Global Architecture K platform is the same fundamental TNGA-derived underpinning shared across Toyota and Lexus's most important crossover and SV products. And latest iteration is the key phrase here. It suggests Lexus isn't simply bolting a new dashboard onto an unchanged chassis. They're bringing forward the most current refinements to the platform itself. The same kind of structural and suspension mount improvements that Toyota has been rolling into RAV4 and Camry-based vehicles across 2025 and 2026. That has real implications for ride quality, noise isolation, and structural rigidity, the exact attributes that luxury SUV buyers in this segment care about most, even when they never think to ask about platform generations by name. Here's a number that genuinely changes the competitive conversation, and it's the moment I want you to lean in for. FadeCar's detailed breakdown of the 2027 RX 350 describes wheel offerings ranging from 18 to 21 inches depending on grade, paired with what they call a redesigned grille and stronger light signature, creating a more balanced and expressive front-end presence. 21-inch wheels on a vehicle that's fundamentally built around comfort. First, suspension tuning is an interesting signal. It tells you Lexus wants the top trims to carry genuine road presence without abandoning the brand's foundational ride quality philosophy. And here's the comparison that should make you pause: a Mercedes GLE in a comparably equipped trim, or a BMW X5 with similar wheel and trim packaging, routinely costs several $1,000s more than where the RX 350 is expected to land, while delivering measurably worse reliability scores according to Consumer Reports' long-term ownership data across the luxury SUV segment. Wait, seriously, the RX 350 is positioned to deliver visual presence approaching its German rivals at a lower price point with a reliability advantage that those rivals simply cannot match. That's not a minor value proposition. That's the entire reason Lexus owners are some of the most loyal repeat customers in the entire automotive industry. Let's talk interior comfort specifics, because FadeCar's reporting gets genuinely detailed here, and the numbers matter. The seats receive additional padding for what's described as improved comfort on long drives, paired with quilted leather upholstery, contrasting stitching, and upgraded trim elements. Higher trims are expected to introduce open-pore wood, brushed metal accents, and Lexus-branded inlays, details that FadeCar's directly compares favorably against costlier European competitors. Front seats get power adjustment, with memory function plus heating and cooling, while rear seat passengers get generous legroom and independent climate control. And the soundproofing story deserves its own moment, because FadeCar's specifically highlights active noise cancellation technology, working alongside Lexus's traditional sound, deadening engineering to keep the cabin quiet even on crowded, noisy highways. That's a meaningfully different value proposition than chasing horsepower numbers. It's luxury defined as the absence of stress, rather than the presence of spectacle. Now here's a comparison point worth sitting with for a second, because it reframes how you should think about this entire vehicle category. Two of the loudest, most attention-grabbing trends in the luxury SUV space right now are massive touchscreens that dominate the dashboard and aggressive sport, tuned suspensions that prioritize cornering grip over ride comfort. The RX 350, based on everything we're seeing in this refresh, is deliberately walking away from both of those trends. The current RX already runs a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster paired with a 9.8-inch touchscreen, not the largest in its class by any measure, alongside wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, a Wi-Fi hotspot, a wireless charging pad, and a 12-speaker audio system. According to CarsDirect's detailed feature breakdown, Lexus isn't expected to dramatically inflate that screen size for 2027. Instead, the bet is on a new dashboard architecture that makes the existing technology more intuitive and better integrated. Borrowing design language from newer Lexus models rather than chasing a bigger, better screen war. That's a calculated decision. And in a segment where touchscreen complaints are one of the most common owner frustrations across nearly every competitor brand, it might end up being the smartest move in the entire refresh. So let's pull the competitive landscape into focus, because this is where the RX 350's real opportunity becomes obvious. The BMW X5, the Mercedes-Benz GLE, the Audi Q5 and Q7, the Volvo XC90, the Genesis GV80. Every one of these vehicles is currently competing on some combination of horsepower, technology spectacle, or aggressive styling, and many of them genuinely win those individual battles. The X5 is faster. The GLE has a more dramatic interior light show. The GV80 undercuts on price with genuinely impressive standard features. But none of them, according to Consumer Reports' longitudinal reliability data across the luxury segment, can consistently match Lexus on long-term dependability, predictable maintenance costs, and resale value retention. And those three factors compound over an ownership period in ways that horsepower numbers simply don't. A luxury SUV that costs less to insure, less to maintain, and holds more of its value at trade in time isn't just a nicer car to live with. It's a better financial decision, year after year, in a way that's almost impossible to capture in a single spec sheet comparison. Drop a comment right now and tell me this. When you're shopping in this segment, what actually matters more to you, the badge prestige and performance numbers of a BMW or Mercedes, or the long-term reliability and lower stress ownership experience that Lexus has built its entire reputation around? I want to know where the Auto Explore audience actually lands on this, because the answers genuinely shape which competitor comparisons we build out next. There's one more piece of this story worth unpacking, because it gets at something larger than just one model refresh. Lexus reportedly had a rough start to the year in terms of broader sales momentum. Auto Evolution's market data shows Lexus deliveries fell 17.3% in March 2026 alone, and were down 2.5% for the quarter compared to the same period in 2025, landing at just over 80,000 units. Now, a sales dip like that could be read as a warning sign, but it could also be read as exactly the motivation behind why Lexus is pushing a mid-cycle refresh on its best-selling model a full year ahead of the planned generational redesign. You don't let your flagship volume seller sit unchanged through a soft sales period if you can help it. You sharpen the front end, modernize the dashboard, and give dealers and customers a reason to walk back into showrooms before the competition pulls further ahead. That context makes the timing of this refresh make a lot more sense than treating it as a routine, scheduled update. Here's something else worth flagging, because credibility matters more than hype in this kind of coverage. Not everything about the 2027 RX 350 is confirmed, and I want to be straightforward about that. The exact final grille design hasn't been revealed in production form. The full extent of interior changes beyond the dashboard architecture borrowed from the ES, TZ, and NX models hasn't been detailed publicly, and pricing for the refreshed model hasn't been announced by Lexus in any official capacity. Everything circulating right now, including the trim and wheel size details from Fade Cars, represents informed projection based on current pricing patterns and historical mid-cycle refresh increases, which tend to run modest, typically in the range of $1,000 to $2,000 over the outgoing model year, depending on trim and equipment changes. Lexus has not commented publicly on any of these spy shot findings, which is exactly what you'd expect from a brand that has built an entire identity around quiet confidence rather than hype-driven marketing campaigns. Let me give you my honest take on where this lands, because I think the broader pattern here is more important than any single spec change. The luxury SUV market has spent the better part of a decade in an arms race of screen size, horsepower figures, and dramatic styling statements. And what the RX 350's quiet, surgical 2027 refresh suggests is that Lexus is making a calculated bet that a meaningful percentage of luxury buyers are exhausted by that arms race. They don't want a cabin that feels like a spaceship cockpit. They don't want suspension tuning borrowed from a track car. They want something that feels expensive in the way a perfectly tailored suit feels expensive. Understated, consistent, and built to be enjoyed daily rather than admired occasionally. The spy shots, the dashboard language borrowed from newer Lexus models, the targeted front-end redesign rather than a full overhaul. Every piece of evidence points toward Lexus doubling down on that exact philosophy, rather than chasing the louder competition. So here's my verdict, and I'm not going to hedge on this one. The 2027 Lexus RX 350's quiet mid-cycle refresh is going to outperform several full-blown competitor redesigns launching in the same window, specifically because it's solving the right problems instead of chasing the loudest headlines. A sharper front fascia, a modernized dashboard pulled from Lexus's newest design language, a platform built on the latest global architecture K refinements, all wrapped around the hybrid efficiency and bulletproof reliability that built this nameplate into the best-selling vehicle in the entire Lexus lineup. I genuinely believe this refresh keeps the RX 350 at the top of the midsize luxury SUV sales chart straight through to the full 2028 redesign, and forces several competitors to seriously reconsider their own product timelines. That's my call. Do you think Lexus's quiet, comfort-first approach beats out the louder luxury SUVs chasing horsepower and screen size, or do you think the segment is eventually going to leave Lexus behind for being too understated? Tell me where you land. And if this kind of deep, sourced breakdown is what you actually want from automotive content, not just press release rehashes, but spy photo analysis, platform tracking, and real competitive context, then subscribing to Auto Explore gets you early access to every follow-up video as this RX 350 story develops between now and the official reveal. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and you'll be ahead of this story instead of catching up to it later. This is Auto Explore. We'll see you in the next one.